Is this on? We're good to go? Okay. Yeah, we'll get started with our technical considerations for data quality session. Um, okay. Thanks again for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started. So welcome. I'll start with introduction. Speakers today, we're going to kind of tag team through the presentation here. My name is Christy Knight. I'm a program officer with the Strategic Information Evaluation and Informatics Division in the Office of HIV/AIDS. And I'll let my colleagues here in the room introduce themselves, and then we'll jump to our virtual presenter as well.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josephine Mungurere Baker. I'm Program Quality and Data Quality Advisor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nashiva McDavid from the Office of HIV/AIDS, and I'm a data analyst. Thank you.
And then if we can get Jason chiming in from online.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason Rothenbender. I'm a social scientist in the Health Workforce Branch in the Office of HIV/AIDS.
Great, and a special thanks to Jason for joining us extra early on his side and logging in. So thanks for being here. And we also want to recognize a number of our colleagues who have contributed to this presentation and the development. They're all listed below, all of us, everyone from our SIEI division back in Ohio. All right, so in developing this session, there's supposed to be technical update sessions. We realize that we don't really have too many major updates related to our various data streams right now. We will cover some updates at the end, including some foreshadowing of bigger changes possibly to come. But where in prior years there may have been some larger updates related to more indicators or expenditure reporting, such as when we made the big change to the current financial framework, and last year added a whole new data stream with the HRH Inventory. But this year the changes are more minimal, and we're also at a point of time now where Q4 data has been submitted, with a great big thanks to all of our partners and USAID colleagues who have made that happen. We know Q4 is always a giant push to get data in and clean and ready to go. We wanted to take a slightly different focus. We had heard some feedback from local partners that there were a few topics of interest, including aligning HRH reporting with requirements, allocating expenditure data by program area and beneficiary, and best practices for data quality. So we're aiming to weave those three topics together a little bit under the bigger umbrella of data quality. We will provide some examples of best practices and tools and resources available to support data quality assessment and improvement. And as noted, we'll also cover some highlights of the mostly minimal changes in data reporting for this next year. Here's just a snapshot overview of our agenda and the flow of what we'll cover, and we'll also reserve time at the end for questions. So while, again, much of our focus today will be on data quality, we wanted to start with a broader framing of why and how we use data and really understand the importance of data quality. Historically, data has been an ongoing and critical component of the PEPFAR program. We collect a lot of data. Under the new PEPFAR strategy, leading with data is one of the three critical enablers that underlie the strategic pillar. So will continue to be an ongoing focus and critical part of the work we do in PEPFAR. One example of ways that we use our data in a very important way is how we track our progress towards EPI control. And data also informs then how we make adjustments in our programs in order to continue progress on that trajectory. As we all know, we have a lot of sources of data in PEPFAR and continues to grow, it seems, some years, from program and EPI data to resource-focused data with expenditure reporting, budget, and HRH, as well as program quality monitoring through SIMS. In various combinations, each of these data sources inform various aspects of program planning, improvement, and decision-making, with the big ultimate end goal of improving outcomes and services for our program beneficiaries. Data is used to understand gaps and barriers in who we're reaching and how we can adjust our programs accordingly. Data is used to monitor our program progress, both at the global level and at OU agency and partner level, informing program planning, improvement, and resource allocation. Taking a more analytic approach to how we use data, we can key in on how each of our data sources helps answer specific analytic questions about our programs. Epidata, for example, tells us how each of our data sources helps answer where we should work and which specific populations or geographies we should prioritize. Our budget data tells us what type of work PEPFAR is planning to implement in any given year, broken out by our financial classifications. MER data answers questions of how PEPFAR is doing in achieving its goals. SIMS informs our understanding of the quality of services we're providing in facilities and communities. Expenditure data helps us describe how much it costs to implement our work through PEPFAR. And HRH data tells us the composition and contribution of our staffing investments. And I'll hand it over to Nishiva.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. And feel free to be vocal. I know we just ate lunch, but no worries. So thank you, Christine. As a reminder, my name is Nishiva McDavid, and I work in the Office of HIV/AIDS as a data analyst. So if I speak too much in SI, let me know. This might look familiar to some of you. This is basically our PEPFAR, a couple of our specific data flows. So we have a lot of complex systems and cycles that implementers are key in generating and reporting data for all of our use. Partners implement HIV/AIDS programs and collect data for us to understand progress and impact and make recommendations and adjustments as needed. And the discussion of those recommendations and adjustments involve all stakeholders, hopefully, or most stakeholders, usually between HQ, country teams, and implementing partners, and even some of their stakeholders. Data is constantly changing and moving from multiple systems, and it could be changed by mistake through human error. If you're using a system, maybe a blackout caused some of your data transfer to mess up. So before we explore examples of data use and data quality, we should have a high level understanding of how that data that addresses those questions are accessed, reported, and used. Who's speaking to, I'm gonna use this laser because these are cool. Who's speaking to who? Who's supplying that information to which stakeholder? And included in this understanding are the goals and purposes for collecting the various types of data formally and informally. So another way of saying that is if you always remember why you're collecting this data, your incentives for high data quality are pretty high because you're going to use it. Collect data you're going to use. That's a general rule I think we can all agree to because of the level of effort required to go through all these different stakeholders, access all these different types of data, double check all the quality of all this data that's moving from site, clinicians, data manager offices to implementing partners through summary sheets, different tools that they're sending to their agency colleagues at the probably embassy or country team office. And those agency colleagues are talking to other stakeholders, PEPFAR, other members in their health team, and back to implementing partners. So knowing how data flows from site to high-level aggregates helps data users identify progress, gaps, opportunities for improvement, and even success stories. So PEPFAR data and data streams are used throughout the planning and implementation cycle and monitoring cycle. So we collect data on our program results, primarily through MER. We also have some custom indicator data, high frequency reported data. We collect, like Christy mentioned, data on our program quality and of services, and not just the services, but the sites that these services are administered. Program and financial, primarily with our planning through our FAST tool, which might go through some changes in the next year, through ER tracking, work planning, human resources through our HRH Human Resources for Health Inventory, and other types of data such as SRE, above site, resource alignment, the Sustainability Index dashboard, which we do every 2 COP cycles, ROP cycles, DQAs, and others. So all of these different types of data speak to different purposes and different uses of the data that we collect. And as you can read, hopefully the text is big enough, but these are some of the examples of how they're used. Setting annual targets, which many of us are very familiar with. Identifying actionable remediation activities. Contextualizing program performance, because data by itself is not useful. Applying context to that data, storytelling to that data is where we can is what most of us try and do when we're trying to use it for data decision making. USAID itself has some very specific data streams to help us fill in critical gaps to ensure accountability and success of our program. So many of you have probably been in meetings where you heard that a lot. MER doesn't say it all. Like we have a lot of MER program results that doesn't tell the complete story. So we try to get a bit more complete with HFR, high frequency reporting, which does real time tracking of results for the purpose of preempting issues and course correction. We try and fill in the gaps with custom indicators that may not be relevant to every IP under MER, but for your specific KP program, for your specific OBC program, if you're doing prevention, it provides a more comprehensive view of program impact and helps identify needed course correction at the same quarterly basis of MER. Also with budget, routine monitoring of partners' spend through accruals and outlays. I mean, the word ceiling means something to a lot of people when they hear it. So this is an example of PEPFAR being used at a high level, and it's used at multiple levels, but it's just to remind everyone, public platforms that are used to hold us accountable and increase this transparency and helps with global planning. So our fellow donors who we might be in very specific meetings with during ROP and COP or estimation meetings, they also have access to our high-level aggregate numbers. So if you've never been to the Panorama Spotlight website, please have a look, because even as local partners, even as IPs, there's useful data such as structured data sets, data dictionaries, there's a knowledge center that goes over the PEPFAR data and systems that can be used for capacity building. There's a data published calendar, commonly asked questions, FAQs, and a glossary. There's also high-level numbers that you can filter by OU, even by technical area. There's also, I think it's helpful, a little corner of how we communicate our data to the rest of the world, to folks who may not be as well-versed in PEPFAR as the rest of us are. Another example of what's available on Panorama Spotlight this is what I was speaking to, examples of how our data is shared and communicated to the public. So this is SIMS. So some of us may have been on SIMS visits before. We know it's a lot of time, it's a lot of questions, whether we're using the app or paper. Shout out to the HI team at HQ. But this is how it's communicated out to the world. So it's very clear and specific, where people who want to know about SIMS can see the scores as color-coded at what level, and there's a data glossary that helps them understand what that question gets at, what's required to answer that question. Those are also available publicly on the Datum website, are the tools that are available to everybody who might be interested. Another example of data use, using all the data at aggregate level, we can start to consider bigger analytic questions. For example, are we investing in the right technical areas to address the final gaps in reaching epidemic control? We need to look at a combination of our EPI program, of our EPI data, program data, financial data, and then we assess if we need to make adjustments for future allocation. So, of course, we cannot consider these sorts of questions in a vacuum. We will need to consider the funding landscape and sources of data external to PEPFAR as well, but there may be areas where government may be better poised and positioned to take on portions of this portfolio to close gaps. So this is an example of how we look at it. For example, our budget data broken up by key program areas. How are we spending our resources? We can also look at what we are buying with our resources and see if the spend patterns reflect our different programmatic approaches appropriately, and further question or analyze if different approaches and spends are yielding different results, and context around it as well. Because again, data are numbers. Numbers is not a story. You have to add the context to it. Another way we can think about our internal budget and expenditure data is to leverage the financial framework to demonstrate how we are focusing resources to close the gaps is by considering in specific beneficiary populations. Historically, as you can see from this graphic, very few resources from our budget are tagged to specific populations, with the vast majority falling in non-targeted populations, a big old bucket of everybody else who's not agent sets. This is likely due to lack of attribution to resources rather than actual programming, but we cannot be sure. We should potentially start by being more strategic about how we use our financial tools, such as the FAST, so we can better understand our resource investments and plan for the future. And we can talk more about some approaches to expenditure allocation later on in slides, but these are just, again, examples. With HRH Inventory, the health workforce is a significant investment across PEPFAR programs. Just the other day, we were hearing in panels about how many community health workers were trained through PEPFAR, how many folks at sites were trained through PEPFAR. So in some countries, the expenditure of the HIV health workforce is upwards of half the country's total PEPFAR funding support. Understanding what functions these workers perform, where they're located, everything that we probably have talked about or you've talked about in specific meetings, data helps answer those questions, and the level of data and the quality of that data helps you to make sure that your decisions are well informed. These are some caveats, because with data quality, you should always have caveats. This is my personal opinion. I don't think any data collection does not have caveats. If you don't, you're not thinking hard enough for them. But I'm not going to read every single one of them. But while HRH inventory data is valuable and a critical resource, like any data set, there are some limitations with HRH inventory data that need to be noted. And these are some of the high-level limitations. And Jason, our HRH expert, we can go into that if you have questions at the end of the presentation. But these are just some things to consider as we work to better understand our staffing footprint. And when we talk about data use and data quality, these are some of the things you consider when you're making decisions surrounding that data or using that data. So all of this, and when the slide comes up, it will all make sense. All of this gets at, we get our data from sites, right? But our sites are serving people, our clients. So ultimately, our HIV/AIDS data is used hopefully to inform and impact our client services. Documentation makes data reporting possible. So it all starts from where it's documented. High quality data relies on documentation starting from usually the site. And unreliable data creates unreliable data for decision making. You might have heard garbage in, garbage out, trash in, trash out, bad in, bad out, all saying the same thing. So incomplete documentation leads to missed opportunities for providing high quality services to clients relying on our sites. And we'll go over it in the next slide, but just some high level examples. And if your data sources are unreliable, then so is the data being reported and used for decision making, such as if your site or if your workers at the site are not properly recording who has missed appointments, you may not have a really good understanding of what your loss to follow-up is. If you're not completely logging your dispensed supplies, not just medications such as ART, but also PrEP and PPE and RTKs, you might miscalculate your projected use, your projected need, and you might have a stock out. So high fidelity documentation and data reporting helps country teams, IPs, and stakeholders better understand and identify which national guidelines and policies and just needs need to be updated or even drafted. So, for example, when PrEP first came into play, a lot of country teams had to start building and drafting. So when you think about your common data sources that inform the quality of your data, think of your registers, think of your stock cards. As IPs, you might have summary tools that you send to data managers and they have to fill out. How can those be improved to make easier the collection of data and improve the quality of the data? Unfortunately, you can't see anything, but this insights are as good as the data we collect, which I just went over. So I'm gonna, if in the slide, you remember the sources of tools, the sources of data that we have: budget, SIMS, ER, above site, and it was showing you all the different ways that they're used, such as program improvement, global program progress, resource allocation. To bring it all together, all these insights and the way we use them and the decisions they ultimately inform are only as good as the data we have. So this is why data quality is so essential. When we have data that is incomplete or inaccurate, it undermines sometimes in a cascading way all those intermediary decisions and processes that ultimately impact beneficiary services. And that's who we are here to serve. Sometimes that gets lost and not intentionally. We don't mean to. Like when you're in an Excel sheet, you are deep in an Excel sheet. But those are people who are informing those numbers. And those are the people whose lives we want to improve with our services. So if commodity forecasting is poorly informed by data quality, you might result in stockouts. Priority populations might be missed if there isn't a real good understanding of the gaps and the barriers that we have in our program. The time spent on the wrong issues of data cleaning or data cleaning like that informs IP management or even in sub-partner management. If you think there's a problem and it turns out that was never actually the problem, that was an error because of a decimal point, that can lead you to spend time that could be better spent on other things. The misrepresentation of the global epi control status, Q4 is right around the corner. And what holiday in PEPFAR world is Q4 associated with? December 1st, World AIDS Day. That's when all of our big numbers are shared with the rest of the world. There are concerts involved, but sometimes those numbers get looked at closely. And if there's an error in those numbers, then there's an error in the misunderstanding of how we're doing. The money allocated not being allocated strategically, and it affecting our resource allocation, and up to the national policy and guideline development level, defining eligibility criteria for services. So if it's not well informed, if you don't have good quality data, you might help draft a guideline that limits the type of services you can provide to your clients. And some of us in our countries may have experienced that with PrEP. We may have experienced that with index testing. So think through how you can improve data quality in your data collection system, so that way these outcomes are considered, just implied. So next we have, we're going to go over data quality definitions, requirements, and responsibilities with Dr. Baker. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to wait a little bit. How are we doing from the tech over there? How is everyone doing? I think maybe your wishes are finally heard. During lunches, tea breaks, some of the feedback we keep on receiving is like, oh, it'd be great, if it'd be more talking than slides. Of the system that at the point of service delivery, also at the PSNU level, which is intermediate level, where data is being aggregated, such as district and regions or county, and also at the national or OU level, where data is being reported to. In this case, it's going to be at the Ministry of Health or to USAID through DATAM system. So data quality is not only a good practice. Data quality is important for it's not only important for ability to effectively use data. It is also a mandate for us across stakeholders. So we have about 4 mandates that I can speak to right now. Probably you guys are going to be able to come up with the additional ones. The first one is agency-wide directive from OHA on data quality strategy. This speaks to the USAID ADS 201 policy that requires all USAID funded programs to conduct data quality assessments on all indicators that are being reported externally. The second one is from the ESCAC expectation and guidance. This is also in MA and COP guidance, which is a shared responsibility that is done across all the implementing agencies, meaning that not only USAID, could be CDC, DOD, Peace Corps, and all, et cetera, et cetera. PEPFAR mandates that all PEPFAR OUs to proactively conduct data quality assessments at multiple levels and across technical areas, and ensure that data quality is institutionalized as part of your entire data management cycle. And the third is around multi and bilateral stakeholders space. Data quality has always been a focus of global HIV monitoring and reporting efforts. So at USAID, I think you all know this, we work with WHO, UNAIDS, and Global Fund, and those actors that are implementing HIV programs to come up with harmonized approaches and tools to measuring and improving data quality. And the most important one that is now is the host country government. This is where there's work towards advocacy and enabling environment that foster quality of services that are being delivered. So data quality is a shared responsibility, and to respond to the mandate I was just talking about, we have these 5 approaches to data quality. The first 3 approaches they are very specific to USAID, and the last two are specific to implementing partners. So USAID is expected to plan and execute data quality assessments and identify data quality issues in alignment with PEPFAR COP guidance, MAR 2.6 at this time before it changes to something else. And again, as I mentioned earlier, USAID ADS 201 policy. And you as our implementing partners, you do play a crucial part in managing data quality. Therefore, by routinely implementing robust internal data quality assurance and improvement measures, then you are able to maintain data quality, address data challenges as they arise, and at the same time reinforce the USAID PEPFAR program quality. So let's transition over on how we will be addressing and assessing PEPFAR data quality. To get us started, the first thing for us that I want us to talk about is an update that we were recently audited by Office of the Inspector General. And the actual report is linked on this slide, which reads PEPFAR in Africa. USAID can take additional steps to improve controls over data quality. The main objective of this audit was that to assess the extent to which USAID has designed and implemented internal controls over the collection, verification, and reporting of PEPFAR data. This was done only for treatment indicators for the period of FY 2017 to 2020. And as I mentioned, the report came out September of this year. There were only 3 OUs that were assessed. So the findings were that USAID lacked documentation, specifically on data quality controls within data. The second one that is around the required data quality assessments where there's no documentation that either those were done or not. And also there was a lack of documentation on application of best routine data quality assessments practices by implementing partners. So again, as I mentioned, the link is here. If you want to know more about what the report is about, you can read that. But let's look at the OIG recommendations that we received. We received an overarching recommendation, but also it is broken down into 3 buckets. USAID is supposed to ensure that mission consistently implement and document USAID data quality measures and ensure there's an oversight over implementing partners' routine internal data quality assurance and improvement. Specifically, when we look at the PEPFAR data quality check processes, it was recommended that PEPFAR data quality control measures at admission are supposed to be well documented and are applied consistently. And then the second one for required agency and PEPFAR DQAs, missions are supposed to be documenting to be able to comply with agency requirements on how to respond when PEPFAR interagency DQAs are not taking place or reports for that are not received. And then the last one, which is specific to implementing partner, was that PEPFAR routine data quality assessments that are being conducted by implementing partners admission must go through the process of cross-referencing data sources. So you cannot just do data quality on one source and think that all is good. You have to cross-reference that to a secondary data source and make sure that the data are matching, and if there are issues, to kind of identify those issues, and also to include the controls for oversight of this particular process. And this is going to be done by the mission by USAID. So I want to hone in on specific on routine data quality assessments because this is specific to implementing partner, and this is where the technical guidance that is going to be shared next is it's going to be focusing on. Like I mentioned earlier, our data quality assurance and quality improvement approaches, they are multi-layered and a shared responsibility. We all have a role to play. And when we do conduct a comprehensive DQAs, of course, we are coming to the sites where you're providing services. And those are typically done by USAID or interagency. And similarly, the second one, which is also not highlighted, is done by USAID, and then there's a data quality monitoring. And then routine data quality assessment is very specific to implementing partner. So what is the key technical guidance for the routine data quality assessment specific for implementing partner? So the recommendation when it's come to planning is that implementing partners are supposed to be integrating routine data quality assurance and improvement activities in your work plan. So every time you are doing your work plan, you have to make sure that you have RDQAs as part of your implementation strategy. The recommended frequency for doing the routine data quality assessments is a quarterly basis. And the approach that is being advocated not only by OHA, by USAID, also by the report from the OIG audit, is that we have to cross-validate against several data sources that you have on site. It could be EMR to client chart. It could be client chart to register. It could be EMR, and whichever way you are doing your reporting, that's how you need to do that. We are ready to kind of go over detailed training around this area, how that can work. So we'll talk more about this. And then the other piece is around the recommendation on interpretation of findings. There are three. In most cases, when you are doing your routine data quality assessment, your analysis is going to give you at least three of these type of findings. The first one is where there's a discrepancy of greater than 10%. And when this happens, when you conduct a routine data quality assessment and your finding is that the discrepancy is more than 10%, this is going to trigger a comprehensive DQA by USAID. That's why I was coming back to the fact that it's a shared responsibility. What you do, I'll let USAID what needs to happen next. And then if your findings are between 5 to 10% discrepancy, there's going to be an active data quality improvement that is going to be done jointly maybe by with implementing partners, or there's going to be a data quality monitoring that is going to be done by mission. And if your findings are less than 5%, they have a discrepancy of less than 5%, the data quality recommendation here is going to be that you need to continue doing routine data quality monitoring where those discrepancies are until that discrepancy is not that number. Where it comes to documentation, one of the main things that the OIG also found out, we all know that we probably do routine data quality assessments. I know our partners does that routine data quality assessments, but what was lacking is a documentation to show evidence that is being done. And for that reason, that's why this is very critical that the routine data quality assessments reports and any planned quality improvement interventions are shared with your activity manager and AOR or COR, who then will determine together with you appropriate actions that needs to be taken. This might include either data quality monitoring, depending on the findings, of course, or a DQA or other quality assurance and quality improvement measures. So what and where could be the focus for of our routine data quality assessments or any DQA in that matter? The DQA can occur at any level where indicators are being measured. So they can occur at the system level where you can do a DQA around your supply chain, labs, EMR, or health information systems, or a cascade where there's prevention, testing, treatment, and viral load suppression, or population where there's key population, priority population, OVC, or AGYW. But I'm hearing that we are losing voice. I don't know if it's my fault. I'm looking at the chat. I'm getting some some concern that we are losing voice. So hopefully it has been restored, and apologies, colleagues who are on a virtual platform. I wanted to share some few examples of existing approaches and tools that are very useful for you in doing rapid quality checks and informing data quality assurance. We have two tools. Data review tool that contains checks to assess aspects of data quality that can help you with identifying potential issues and inconsistencies in the data. The data review tool, probably most of you are familiar with this because it is embedded within the data system when you are reporting your data on a quarterly basis. The second is data anomaly detection tool. This tool we developed during the pandemic, so it's kind of fairly new for most people. It helps you'll be able to do your data quality checks remotely without a need of going to a site. I'll talk a little bit more about this in the subsequent slides. It's to help you in identifying a site, facility, and or indicators that require further scrutiny and track and compare data quality between reporting units and over time. So for the data review tool, it does contains checks to assess several aspects of data quality that can help you with identifying potential issues and inconsistency in the data. And each data quality check occurs at site by implementing mechanism. That means it occurs at the time where data entry is taking place. So what the DRT tool does, what the DRT where can you find this DRT tool? It can be found by accessing Genie app that is found within Datum. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Datum. I'm assuming all of you. So within Datum, when you log into Datum, there are a list of apps, and then one of those apps is going to be called Genie. So using the same credentials as your Datum credentials, then you can go to Genie and then you'll be able to find the DRT tool for you to do those data quality checks before you submit your final report to USAID. And this tool provides 4 types of checks. The MAR logic check, disaggregate completeness, checks across time periods, and contextual site by IM information. So any anomalies that are found within the DRT are going to be flagged in that color there. So briefly on a data anomaly detection tool. This tool supports a remote routine data quality monitoring by signaling anomalies at sites. It does use algorithmic approach and R to identify patterns across indicators and sites. The tool does not, though, this is a caveat to be aware of, it does not diagnose the source of an anomaly, but rather it identifies sites and indicator that requires further investigation and on-site data quality review. The results output from this tool are coming in Excel form, where the anomalous values are all going to be colored in red. And when you see the stronger the intensity of the red color, that is a higher likelihood that a particular indicator or site are contributing to the anomalous outcome that we are looking at. So the current iteration of this data anomaly tool, it's a URL based. We have an R Shine app. Previously, we had a hard-coded R where you have to download the R application and kind of enter all the your values in there and then being able to extract that. But right now it's very simplified. It is web-based and data is that is going to be pulled against which is found within Datum or Panorama. It's the mass structured data set. And then once you input that data, then you produce these Excel templates that shows areas where there's issues. So the tools basically is designed to analyze only aggregate data, and there's not going to be any individual level information that is needed. So there's no concern around PII as an example. And also it analyzes a large data set. So just to mention that there's going to be a training on this particular tool that is going to I'm sure very, very soon, but I can't speak the dates right now just in case I'm going to make quote some wrong dates. But we are going to make sure that your AOR and activity manager share those dates. And also when we have a call with implementing partners, we're also going to be able to communicate that with you. So quickly on the anomaly detection, I just wanted to mention that it does uses two approaches: the recommender systems and time series. The recommender systems, basically what it's going to do is identify patterns across facilities and indicators to make prediction based on those patterns. And this is only going to be looking at the quarterly data. And then for time series is going to make predictions for future occurrence based on historical trends and compare forecasts to reported values. And this is looking across the 12 months worth of data. So just to mention a type of the analytic questions these two approaches are answering. The recommender system is answering questions such as how has the frequency of anomalies changed over time by implementing partner? The second one maybe is in a given quarter, which facilities are most commonly flagged with anomalies that require root cause analysis or interventions? And then which MAR indicators most commonly drive the determination that a facility is anomalous? Then for the time series, the analytic question is what facilities are implementing partners are flagged most as anomalous over time, and which indicators are commonly flagged as anomalous over time, plus many additional other analytic questions. So I just wanted to mention these few useful resources, training and tools. I believe most of you probably are familiar with the first one. We did develop during the COVID era, during the lockdown, a data quality training for local partners. This was a synchronous and asynchronous approach that was used. However, right now it is also web-based. Right now we are only going to it is still online and everybody can go in and do this training self-paced. It's in English and French. Those links there will take you to those, and the password is USAID. I've also included some major evaluation DQA tools. Backup. Basically, in terms of the training that we have, is more for treatment cascade indicators. If you are interested in all the other indicators, those ones we don't have them on online version training on that, but we can figure out how we are going to proceed with that. Those are some of the talks we are thinking about. And then I wanted to mention that we have measure evaluation DQA tools which were developed through USAID that you can use. They also have not only treatment indicator, they also have other indicators as well for you to use. And then I've included here a link for data review tool, which provides you with the whole guidelines on how to use that data review tool within Datum. Similarly, I've included the SOP for data anomaly detection that is going to walk you through the entire process, entirely the statistical approach that is being used for this tool and all that. And then there's a Seeker tool that we're going to be talking about. This is Purpose Strategic Information Capacity Assessment tool that helps you to assess your capacity and identify needs for capacity building. It is through this process that's why we were figuring out that issues around data quality assessment and quality insurance and use are a need for local partners. That allowed us to say, oh, there's a need for that, then let's develop this training for local partners. So by doing that assessment, then we will know, as USAID will know, like, there's a gap here, let's do something about that around capacity building. So with that, I'm going to stop here and have my colleague take over. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thanks, Josephine. So Josephine has given us a great dive into what data quality is and tools and resources to assess and improve data quality. However, you may have noticed that a lot of the tools and resources primarily address our program data, which in our case is MER data, and rightly so. Again, it's a very critical data stream. It's a big focus of a lot of what we do. But as we noted in the beginning, our other data sources are also important and factor into decision-making processes as well. So we wanted to give some examples of how to apply data quality principles and improve data quality with other data sources. For expenditure data, we are actually in the process of piloting a DQA approach and some tools specific to that financial data stream, which we're really excited about. And thanks to some of our teams and mission partners in Jamaica and Lesotho have been helping with some of the development and maybe doing some of our piloting. We are hoping this pilot will result in tools that will be available relatively soon and can serve as a resource for both missions and IPs to collaboratively work to review and improve our expenditure reporting data quality. So keeping focus on expenditure data, even without specific DQA tools yet, there are still ways that we can be actively thinking about data quality. Within the templates and submission processes, there are a number of validation checks built in, both qualitative and quantitative. But we know there are often still questions about actually allocating expenditures up front across the financial classification framework and really ensuring that we're getting that accuracy, validity, and reliability of our data. So how can we check for these data quality issues? Here's a few examples of different types of indicators we can look at from the data that we already collect, but sometimes don't examine as closely. And just to note that these indicators help us flag potential issues, things that we need to delve into a little bit further, though there's often good reasons why there may be derivations or irregularities in some of these indicators. But we just want to make sure we understand why things are reported the way they are. So allocating expenditures across the financial classification framework can be seen some ways as a little bit more of an art than a science. There is built-in flexibility in our guidance that leads to some options for different approaches in allocation. In some cases, it makes sense to split allocations of expenditures and more completely disaggregate expenditures across sub-beneficiary and sub-program areas. This can help us demonstrate the breadth and depth of our programs. The downside to this approach is that there may be some limitations due to restrictions in our templates for the number of interventions that can be included and also at that lower level of disaggregation, it can become challenging to accurately estimate and reflect some costs. One concern we hear a lot is some of our cross-cutting costs. How do you allocate staff time, rent, and equipment at that very fine level of detail and do it with any kind of accuracy? Alternatively, in order to show a more cohesive picture of programs, some interventions can be lumped or grouped together following guidance to reflect interventions based on what's termed in the financial classification guidance as preponderance of funding. The downside to this approach is that we lose the ability to reflect all of our programs and really fully represent and tell the story of our programs and populations we serve. So the bottom line is there's no one size fits all approach. We find many partners use a combination of these two approaches, which is totally fine, but it's important to remember both that more detail doesn't necessarily equal better data or reporting. But at the end of the day, we'd recommend focusing on ensuring that we're representing our program outcomes instead of really thinking as much about the detail of the inputs. So we can look at a couple of just examples related to that balance between grouping or splitting, remembering that there are no hard and fast rules for this, and these are just recommendations. So in example one, we can consider a partner that implements a mix of service delivery and non-service delivery approaches for their care and treatment program, with about 10% of their activities estimated to be non-service delivery. In that case, it might make sense to group all these interventions under a care and treatment service delivery, especially if it's a program that does a more comprehensive set of activities and the interest is really in making sure that, say, we're disaggregating by beneficiaries to really highlight what populations that we're serving. On the other hand, we may have an implementing partner that mostly works on activities that benefit the general population, but about 30% of their clients are pregnant and breastfeeding women, which is, for the country they're working in, a recognized important or priority population and may have been flagged for particular attention and implementation focus. So in this case, it is useful to break out the expenditures between non-targeted population and pregnant and breastfeeding women. Especially where there's ability to estimate those with some degree of reliability, and then estimate or allocate those shared or cross-cutting costs where applicable. In addition to those types of consideration where we're thinking about program priorities, another key factor in considering data quality for expenditure data is ensuring we have alignment between our data sources. We want to keep in mind the ability to reasonably track or estimate any disaggregation of resources always, because that helps with our data quality. But where feasible, if an IP has results reported for priority populations, especially if they're targeted activities, then there should be corresponding reflections of expenditures with allocation to the appropriate beneficiary group. So this could be pregnant breastfeeding women in the example we covered on the last slide, or a KP focus. If you're reporting KP Prev, we'd expect to see some expenditures allocated to key populations beneficiary group. Similarly, if an IP reports on key indicators or technical areas, we'd expect to see those reflected in allocation to program or subprogram areas. So if a partner is reporting on PrEP new results, we would logically expect to see expenditures and funds allocated to the PrEP subprogram area. One note, we recognize there are still challenges in the financial classification framework for how to represent some priorities, such as community-based programming. So again, there's always some gray area in decision making. I will note, and we'll allude to this at the end as well, that there are efforts underway to review and revise the financial classification framework to also reflect some program priorities a little better, but also to make some of this allocation process a little easier and more clear cut. So more to come on that in the coming months, hopefully. So I have referenced several times the frequent need to allocate shared or cross-cutting expenditures across interventions. This is something we've heard from partners over and over again about being one of the biggest challenges in expenditure reporting. So this last fall, and then again this September, we held a webinar hosted through ASAP, and our colleagues from EGPAF shared some of their best practices related to data management, and specifically a tool or a template, as you can see here, that they use to look up front at staffing and other shared or cross-cutting costs, and allocate based on time, and really kind of take a more strategic approach and standardized approach. It's just, again, one example or approach that can be used, but provides a great example of a tool that can be used in alignment with a partner's existing financial systems to meet expenditure reporting requirements. So we're not asking everyone to revise their systems, but supplemental tools like this can be really helpful to get a systematic and reproducible approach to allocation. And within the slides, which should be circulated, there's a link to both the template and the webinar recording, so you can hear our colleagues from EGPAF talk a little more specifically about how they use this tool. And with that, I will hand it over to Jason to cover some more specific examples of assuring data quality with HRH data, and hopefully we can get him back on the line. Can we get Jason unmuted?
The location and functions of PEPFAR-supported staff. It's essential to optimizing impact, advancing epidemic control, and informing sustainability planning. Complete and accurate HRH inventory. It's critical for effective coordination with partner governments to reduce our staffing gaps. Mechanisms without complete HRH inventories and misalignments between mechanisms without complete HRH inventories, and if there's misalignments between the HRH data and the expenditure reporting data, that can misrepresent the size and the proportion of the USAID staffing footprints. And really, as Nishida mentioned, with garbage in, garbage out, poor data quality limits the overall utility of HRH inventory data as it does for other data streams. Next slide, please. So what happens if one mechanism is missing from the HRH inventory data set? If you look at the bar chart below, this is real data, and we just highlighted one large OVC mechanism, or one mechanism primarily working with orphans and vulnerable children. And you can see that if it was excluded or it was underreported, then we would have the group we're seeing we're seeing the staffing expenditures as the bar charts, but it's across program areas. And if just one mechanism, that one partner didn't fully submit their HRH inventory data, or it wasn't complete with what they did submit, we would have very skewed understanding of our total USAID staffing footprint in that country. It would be discussions with local governments and other partners, and limit our ability to strategize around sustainability planning. So it's not just important to have submissions from partners, but also make sure what's in those submissions is of the highest quality and fully and accurately reflects the staffing footprint being supported by PEPFAR. Next slide, please. If we can click a few of these, we do have a number of different data quality checks that can be done and should be done prior to uploading or submitting the HRH inventory. And I'm not going to read everyone on this. I think these are the type of reviews that we would expect to be done before you even upload into data. First is checking for completeness. Are all the sheets in the template complete? And the HRH inventory, each row is a separate individual. And so if some columns are columns are entered for that row. There are also some sort of aggregated quick checks that we can do is just looking at the total number of staff that are reported in the HRH inventory. Does that reflect at a high level the total number of supported staff for your program? There's logic checks. We've now in the second year of HRH inventory submissions, and we've increased a number of logic checks into the datum system that we can identify when HRH templates are uploaded. But these logic errors, they take a long time to resolve. And a lot of the templates, take a long time to complete, as I'm sure most of us in this room are aware. But also, a lot of these submissions happen right up near the submission deadline. And so there isn't much time to identify and then resolve a number of these validation checks. So, some things to consider when entering HRH inventory data are if the staff is above site, are they entered as non-service delivery? If multiple staff have the same functions and responsibilities, are their employment titles consistent, and are they mapped to the appropriate program areas? Checking for duplicates. We want to make sure that we have everyone receiving PEPFAR support, all staff that are receiving PEPFAR support reported, but we also want to make sure that all staff are reported only once. If we have, I know sometimes if we're entering a large number of staff, there's ways to copy and paste, which is fine, but we need to make sure that we're reviewing what we're doing and we're not counting the same individual multiple times, because that will really skew our understanding of our staffing footprint. Except for checking for extreme values. We don't have this check, built into the system now, but it's happened on occasion where we can see expenditure values in particular that are very, very high or very, very different for the same position. And sometimes that makes sense and is an accurate reflection of PEPFAR expenditures, but a lot of times it's a data quality or data entry error. The other error that we see quite a bit of is when expenditure data is entered in local currency. We can flag that pretty quickly, but that's an important step because we see some significant variation from partner to partner if one partner didn't submit or convert to US dollars. And then lastly, geography. It's important that the facilities, communities, and SNUs that are selected are valid in the system. Otherwise, we won't really know where the staff are working. With the data needs to be entered with facilities and SNUs and community that are already in that data hierarchy. Otherwise, they won't be able to map to other data sets, and we won't be able to triangulate some of those different data streams. Next slide, please. Data quality is the Achilles heel to program success. When there's doubt about the data, and Ashiva mentioned this, when there's doubt about the data we collect and use for decisions, successes can be vulnerable. We focus on data quality so that we are responsive to issues in the earliest stages. We want to ensure that data can be fully utilized to inform program and resource planning. Poor data quality also runs the risk of data fraud allegations. If we understand the quality of the data reported, we can continually work to both improve data quality and also increasingly use those results to inform program quality improvement. Next slide, please. Look at additional data updates. The Office of HIV/AIDS and partners developed an online survey for local partners called the PEPFAR Strategic Information Capacity Assessment, the SICA tool. I think Dr. Baker mentioned this a few slides back. This tool was modeled after the NUPAS tool. What distinguishes SICA from NUPAS is the intent of the tool. NUPAS is intended to be used in the selection process for determining a local partner's ability to be considered, but the SICA tool establishes benchmarks and assesses partners' SI strengths and needs, as well as identify areas for potential capacity strengthening. Next slide. All local partners have access to the SICA tool, and 8 countries piloted the tool that gave us some preliminary results to look at, identify areas in need of capacity strengthening. As you said, the Seeker tool can be used, the results can be used to identify local partner SI strengths and needs, define priority areas of PEPFAR SI capacity development support, and plan and implement capacity development interventions to support local partners. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to complete the survey. Next slide. So during the Seeker tool pilot, we identified there was a need for data quality and data use capacity building. This then led to development of a treatment cascade, data quality assurance online course, treatment cascade data quality assurance online course, where participants learn various DQA approaches and tools used for continuous quality improvement. Links to the training and tools are available on the resource slide of the presentation. Next slide. And lastly, we want to highlight a few other data updates across data streams that we're aware of at this time. So there's a new version of SIMS 4.2, that's aligned with the minimum program requirements and minimum site standards. This is outlined in the 2022 COP ROC guidance. There aren't any major changes to that we're aware of to the FY23 MER, ER, HFR, and HRH reporting. But within ER, the continuation of subrecipient reporting is under discussion. And in FY22, ER will include simplifications to the financial classification framework. There will be more information coming on that. More information on that's forthcoming. The small group is also soliciting feedback on the digital health inventory tool, but the timing will likely be the same for this year, with a single data entry and correction period likely around Q3 and Q4, during Q3 and Q4. And lastly, new CIs have been added for the FY23, as well as additional changes to age bands to better align with the MER 2.5.1 updates. I'd say there's been a lot of interagency discussions and country feedback on a bigger PEPFAR data refresh. And it's really looking at a timeline of 23, FY24. We'll communicate any changes to program and financial data structures, tools, and indicators as soon as we become aware. So just stay tuned for that. But we will communicate them as we have a better understanding of those proposed changes. Next slide, please. I'm going to take this transitions now to the discussion period, where if there's any questions about anything that we've discussed during the previous hour, if there's any sort of program stream. But I'll defer to the presenters in the room, and we have some guided questions if there's interest in that route too. Over.
Great, thank you, Jason, and welcome Josephine and Nishiva to chime in as well. But I want to start by turning it over to y'all. Any questions or comments you have related to any of the material we presented on data quality or the updates on data streams?
And for the virtual folks as well, please feel free to start typing in your questions. But I saw a question in the audience. I think we have. Can you hear okay?
Good afternoon and good morning. So as you were presenting about data quality, I was just thinking about our maybe smaller local partners that may not have a lot of staff. And obviously with the heavy reporting burden, I was imagining at the end of the year when they have to do ER reporting, they have to do HRH, HFR, accrual reports, quarter financial reports, and many other reports that they have to submit. Obviously, maybe that burden alone could influence the quality of the data that they are going to submit. So any words of wisdom in terms of how they can handle that if they are in that situation? Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Could I take that question, I guess? Thank you for that question. So, words for wisdom. I think the first step I would advise we were talking about Seeker tool, what we've done, for example, for local partners, whether they're advanced or they're completely new, is to basically going through this process and assessing, because when you go through this process, you are not doing it alone as in implement as a local partner. You self-assess, and your AOR also assesses you. And by going through this process, if you look at the domains here, human capacity. Oh, I'm not wearing glasses. I was like, how come I can't see? Human capacity for purpose strategic information, it looks at staff availability and staff competency. By doing that, then those things are going to be identified, and your AOR and COR will be aware of that. Then this is where needs assessment are going to be done. Then we can look about the discussion can be around staffing issues. How do we do that? And we could discuss all those issues that you have mentioned. But if you sit on this alone, your AOR maybe is not aware, then there wouldn't be a way of of us being able to support you. But by going ahead and doing this activity, you have identification of that. Either you're going to get additional stuff, or there's going to be some discussions around what are the alternative way in approaching data quality. So, for example, I shared the data anomaly detection tool. That does not require you to go physically to site and do something like that. It's something that you put the data that you're reporting, and then it spits out for you where the issues are. Then you can prioritize in terms of data quality. At what time will I have time for me to be able to do this data quality assessment? At what site? What indicator? Etc. Etc. So there's various tools and approaches that we can do. What you need to do is making sure that you're having that dialogue with your AOR or activity manager in coming up with different ways on how to help with this the challenge that you're experiencing.
And can you hear me okay? And I would happily like to add, because we know everything likes to fall on that last Friday of the quarter, and for Q4 is a perfect example. And in addition to the tools, a lot of you have worked hard to build relationships, not only with your country teams at USAID or CDC or whomever your funding agency is, but also with your sites. So in our work with some of our country teams, when we are discussing what can we at HQ do, what can country teams do, what do IPs need, what some IPs have cited is that what's helped them do that work incrementally. What's helped is them doing that work incrementally. So working with your data managers who are probably going to these sites and collecting from the registers, from the stock cards, from the dispensary logs, the summary totals, and reporting those up to their country teams who are having weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings or monthly meetings. And for some of them, the logic is, since we're meeting anyway, let's get our process for routine review together and look at how we can improve that. So that way, when we do that Q4 reporting, we do that quarterly reporting, when you do that HFR, that work has already been done. And using the other tools that are available can let you know, hey, was it done in high fidelity? Was it done well? Is there a major gap? How do we have 2 million people in treatment in the country of Lesotho when the population is 2 million? Like, those kinds of things come up. So what we've learned is that building those processes and those relationships and getting in the habit of routinely looking at your data has been the best way to check your data quality regularly, because you know your sites better than anybody. You know how many people you expect. You know the people who work there. You know the folks who have families and couldn't make it that day. So that's what we also recommend. Go ahead.
Yep, and I jump in on that too, and I just re-emphasize what Nashiva said about sort of regularly checking data. I think from the expenditure reporting side, that can often seem like a big burden because it's annual reporting. So if you wait until the end of the year to go back through everything and then try and figure out how everything aligns with the financial classification framework, it can be a little daunting. So we do have some partners and some mission teams who together have decided to do more frequent check-ins, and it's not something that gets submitted to headquarters or to PEPFAR, but just as a way to monitor and to kind of get that practice of doing the allocation and also reviewing and kind of incorporating some of these data quality checks. So and also any of the upfront prep you can do. So the tool I mentioned for expenditure reporting is a good way to kind of preset your thinking and approach for allocating reallocating some expenditures, especially where there are some fixed costs that you know are going to be consistent across the year. Kind of getting those logged in upfront in a tool can help with that as well.
Yes.
Sorry, this is one of my favorite questions because Chrissy just reminded me. Take inventory of what work can be done automated or is already done. Like you, as an IP, you probably have tools that you give to your site managers or your data managers to fill out regularly. You might have access to the ministry EMR system, to the ministry database that can literally spit out a flat file for you, which the data folks might know that to be easier because it's just a data set that gives you everything you need instead of you having to go through registrar. So that was another thing that we noticed helped. So there was a point of contact that was responsible for downloading a data sheet from the database or the modules that they use in country to get that data quickly, because they know they only have a few people on their local partner team who may not have time to dedicate doing this every single week. So they might find, I don't want to call them shortcuts, but tools and logins and and people at country team level or even at the site who might be able to help you with this, training up some of your staff at site, because some of them are also interested in doing this work, because it means a lot to them too to know what their programs are actually doing, the results. If you ever did a Sims visits and you've given someone a good score, you might see their reaction being very positive because that validates all the hard work they're doing. So looking into the automated systems that exist and how you can utilize them and leverage them to make your work a bit easier.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I don't know where the
Okay.
Oh, you have to.
Hello. So my name is Melusi Mgomezulu. I'm from Swaziland. I think my question is also somewhat in relation to um, the staff complement within SI amongst us as local partners, but particularly in relation to the Inspectors General recommendations, because I think part of the recommendations were about having the RTQAs done quarterly, right? So where we're coming from, I think as partners, we do it semi-annually. Because also looking at the number of indicators that we're working on, looking at the number of geographical areas that we're looking on. So I wanted to understand maybe what was the reason behind the shift or to do the RTQAs quarterly, and also what about the other activities that we are doing to ensure data quality? Because between conducting the data quality assessment, we do a lot of other things such as spot checks, we do monthly data verifications, we do supportive supervisions and mentorships, which are all meant to address data quality issues based on routine data, amongst other things. So I think that's what I would want to know. Thank you.
Thank you for that great question. In terms of OIG recommendation, it is not a shift essentially. It has always been that routine data quality assessments are supposed to be happening on a quarterly basis. That is how it has been done. However, I do also want to acknowledge that, granted that some data quality checks happens in between. That is why I think we decided to come with other tools that we are talking about. We talked about anomaly detection data review tool that can be done as you are submitting your quarter report through data. You can use that as your evidence as you have done a routine data quality assessment. Similarly, you can do the same with using data anomaly detection, which is also done remotely. You can identify as indicators that are anomalous during the particular quarter, and then you can kind of create action planning against those, and then you can use that as the documentation that you've done that. Where there's a huge discrepancy, anomalies that have been identified as an example, you'd want to prioritize and say, let me just go now. It's going to be maybe on your semi-annual level, then it's going to be after you did anomaly detection this quarter, then the next quarter, okay, based on what findings I found from the anomaly detection, let me go do in-person routine data quality assessments for samples of those of the indicators. Yes, we have a question online. Yes. So the question is from Brenda in Uganda. Hi, Brenda. Are we able to have some of those HRH data quality issues pop in the Excel as you complete a row rather than first uploading to get the errors. The approach would improve capacity for many in real time. Jason, are you online to answer Brenda's question?
Look into, as you know, this year there's about 40 valuation specific errors this year, and I think last year we had just less than 5. It's something that we can explore. It's a little bit easier for us to develop code and run it across the entire data set that's been uploaded. And something that we advised is uploading frequently. There's no limit to the amount of times a file can be uploaded. So for the future or moving forward, we do foundation report generally that tells you the specific rows where there are issues. This is helpful feedback on something that we can look to incorporate more of those checks within the Excel tool for next year. So thank you very much. Rusty, could you hear me? Could everyone hear me?
So we heard you. You as well.
Okay. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me with
the
this?
microphone like that.
Like this? Okay. So I'm Karen. With the West African regional. My question is about USD implemented DQAs. I know you mentioned the ADS, but can you clarify a bit more the expectations for DQAs from the USD level? And also, I'm sure many of the colleagues here will agree with that. There are many sites. What is the expectation in terms of frequency for the DQAs? And are there any tools? And is there support possible from also HQ on that? So.
Yes, thank you for that question. So the frequency for DQA per the ADS policy is for all those indicators that are reported externally. There has to be a DQA that is done within 12 months. And then for the follow-up DQA for that, comprehensive that is supposed to be done 3 years after that. However, we also have a quarterly data quality monitoring that is occurring more routinely that can be done on a quarterly basis, but that is very sample based and it's going to be triggered by some of the issues that have been identified as part of the routine data quality assessments that have been done. Similarly, you have the ability of using the data quality monitoring application. It is an app that is within the iPads that you have that you use for conducting SIMs. To do a couple various iteration of DQMs because it's sample based. It's just a sample client charts. So, for example, if you have 55 clients on treatment, as an example, the maximum client charts you're going to be reviewing is about 76. That is if you are very strict in terms of your data quality, or as low as 54. And that one you can do on a quarterly basis. If you do them enough following the sampling scheme that is stipulated within the DQM, then you can use those results as your compliance to your ADS requirement. And to answer about capacity building, yes, we do conduct trainings and we do support in protocol development, tool development, as well as conducting the DQA's assessments themselves.
We have a question online asking where we can find copies of the tools and training. So we do have the tools. Well, most of these tools are available either on Datum or we'll have links in our slide deck. So once the slide decks are shared, I forget the platform that they're sharing the slide decks on, but they will be available. And the training question is specific. It depends on the training. So some of them might be available in Virtual Academy. Some of them might be available in Datum. Some of them might be available in the USAID platform. And not all of them might be the ones that are available to local partners specifically. We'll make sure that that you have access to them. And if we can't, your country team can also help with that as well.
Yeah, and always reach out. We'll definitely be happy to show you where we can find those. Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Here we go. Here's the contact. Yeah, I'm getting time's up. Time's up. Time's up. All right. Again, thank you so much for your attention. And this is how you can reach out to us. There's 4 email addresses. You can ask any question in either of those email addresses, or you can go be very specific in terms of what are your needs. Hopefully, Piringa, Mercy, you're seeing that. Please reach out and ask any question that you have. And Duncan, yes, will share the slides. Take care. Thank you.